From Big Catholic Guild, and you're listening to Solipsistic Nation.
We just heard Quebec by Panda from his spanking new release, Retake Manhattan, and in the background is Casablanca. Panda, welcome to Solipsistic Nation.
Hi man, how are you?
Pretty tired, but I've had a night of debauchery, but I'm glad to have you on the show.
Cool, man.
Let me ask you, what do Amsterdam, Transylvania, Moscow, Baghdad, Casablanca, Sevilla, Marseille, Quebec, Las Vegas, Monkey Island, Bermuda, and Manhattan all have in common?
They're all places in the world, and they're all places I visited on my album in a thematic journey, and they all come back as tracks on my CD, and the sounds of every city and the themes of every city come back in the music. The CD is like a journey around the world. I've got a flying Dutch ship, which I fictionally use to fly around the world. And I go across cities and places in the world, and in the end we end up in Manhattan, in New York, and we try to capture Manhattan again. Because, of course, 400 years ago, the Dutch founded Manhattan and New York. We try to capture it back. That's the concept of the album.
In the album, you have sort of motifs, you have these sort of themes that come up, like in Transylvania, there's the sound of a pipe organ, and Baghdad obviously has a sort of very Middle Eastern feel. But let's choose a city like, say, Quebec. What was the theme or sound that you used for Quebec?
Well, Quebec is in Canada, and it's pretty cold there. And the track was first called Massacre. It was one of my first tracks, and it was one of the few tracks which was dubbed after a city later on. But I felt it had a pretty cold, pretty mystique and weird, but still angry sound, and fit with Quebec a bit. It's one of the tracks that stands out as being more connected to the city in a more deeper way than most tracks on the CD. Yeah, if you look for tracks like Sevilla, you can see on the surface really quickly that it's Sevilla, the sounds of the town and the sounds of Spanish people. So it's much more easy to see that.
How did this idea for the album come about? What led to the inspiration?
Well, I've always really been interested in the history, and in of course the history of Holland as well, because I live there. And it's really funny for me to see how we're really a small country with 60 million people. I mean, hardly any person in the world can point the Netherlands on a map and actually find it. So it's really funny that 400 years ago we were a really big seafaring nation that just discovered countries and land all around the world, and well, in the end colonized a lot of places as well, which isn't always positive, but it's still funny to see that a small country did that stuff. I think it's cool to reference to that in music as well, and in the concept.
Given the constraints of the album that you're working in thematically, I'm sure some of the songs just sort of came together fairly easily. What was one of the songs that were more difficult to work with to sort of make it come together?
Well, definitely Transylvania. That's the one that took just the most work out of all of them. It's more difficult in a musical way because it's so many melodies and chords and choirs and sounds that are in there. Musically, it's really difficult, and even like for example, the organ in the intro is pretty dissonant. Like it sounds off key, and it sounds off key on a purpose way. It's really like a filmy bad B film type sound, but it took a lot of time to get all the melodies fitting and working together. It's one of the most difficult ones, definitely.
What I'd like you to do is choose one of these cities that appear in the album and share a memory of that city for us.
I'd go for Sevilla, definitely, because I actually visited Sevilla, and the feeling I had with that city just corresponds directly with the track on the album. It's a weird, romantic, nostalgic city with so much going on and so many vibes, and it's got a modern touch and a classic touch, but in a musical way. The harmonics you hear, the harmonium, yeah, those instruments. So definitely that one.
Are there any plans to go on tour and help promote this album and revisit some of these cities?
A lot of people mentioned that idea, and yeah, immense if that would happen. It's not the idea right now, but it would definitely be cool, yeah. Actually, I hear from a lot of people that bought the album, like one person from Sevilla actually, who bought the album for that track and just listened to it, and that's pretty funny to hear that it actually corresponds with real life as well.
The other thing I was kind of curious about is that drum and bass has a certain style and sound that imposes a lot of restrictions on how a song can go, but it seemed that you sort of pushed those notions, those ideas of what drum and bass could be by adopting a lot of these themes. What direction do you think this album's going to take you next for drum and bass?
Well, it was hard for me to get out of those restrictions because there's really a lot of the restrictions in drum and bass. The tracks have to be mixable, like they have to have an intro beat which can be mixed with another track. If it doesn't have that, many DJs won't even mix it. So it's really difficult to balance it out. Don't make it too non-drum and bass that the drum and bass DJs won't play it, and don't make it too boring with the restrictions. But for me, it helped me to just go on new ways in music and in drum and bass and try new things and be more experimental.
If we'd like to learn more about you or hear the album, where can we go online?
You can visit my website, that's PandaDNB.com. And if you want to hear more about my album, where to get it and stuff, you can go to retakemanhattan.com.
Panda, thanks so much for joining us on Solipsistic Nation.
Cool, thanks. It was a pleasure.